I'll tell you how my wife and I looked for an apartment in Luxembourg in the spring of 2022. There were some mistakes, some things weren't done optimally, but here's how it was. I know of two ways to search for an apartment, remotely and locally. Remotely means the applicant is located elsewhere, while the apartment is in Luxembourg. This option is suitable for those who want to move directly into their apartment upon arriving in Luxembourg without any intermediate hotels. This option has its pros and, in my opinion, many cons, which is why I followed a different path. Now I'll talk about the pros. The first advantage is that people moving to Luxembourg start their search well in advance of their move. Like 3, 4, 5 months or even half a year ahead. Apartment search websites always state when the apartment is available. Usually it's either in 2 or 3 months. Well, sometimes an apartment might be available right now. The advantage stemming from this is that people already in Luxembourg are generally not interested in such options because they have to wait 2 or 3 months to move into that apartment. And that happens too. It turns out that the applicant has more options and the search itself is calmer and less stressful. Thus, if an apartment is found remotely and the contract is signed, then immediately upon arrival here in Luxembourg, you can move in, open a bank account, and live like a normal person. Now about the cons and why they outweigh all the pros, at least for me. The first drawback is that it's unclear what location the apartment is in. The photos provided on the website are usually taken from inside the apartment. Google Maps is often outdated too. Google Street View is slowly being updated, but the images can still be very old and the information isn't up to date. There might be construction next to the apartment or a parking lot, a drainage collector or a garbage area. It might turn out that if the apartment is on the ground floor and the garbage bins are right under the window, or there might be street parking right under the window too. You can't see this in the photos. Another non-obvious disadvantage I encountered here in Luxembourg and nowhere else is that in some apartments, mobile signal completely disappears, meaning approaching the apartment even one stop away, everything works fine. But as you get closer to the building, you're down to one bar and inside absolutely nothing. In one of the apartments my wife and I considered, some windows faced the street, which was fine, trees, flowers and birds, but the other windows faced a truck parking lot, literally 15 meters away from the building. You couldn't see this in the photos and I checked Google Maps too, it wasn't there yet, so, well, that's how it is. Another drawback related to the previous one is that it's impossible to understand the specifics of the apartment's interior just from photos or descriptions. Even if the location is clear, there might be strange smells coming from neighbors. Maybe the neighbors are alcoholics. Maybe the fridge door squeaks, maybe the toilet leaks. All these nuances are not apparent from the photos. With some agents, you can arrange a virtual room tour, meaning call via WhatsApp or another messenger with video, and ask them to walk around the apartment and the immediate vicinity to show you what's where, just to get an idea. By the way, you can find videos on YouTube where people walk around Luxembourg neighborhoods and just film them to show what's where. Another minus, not so much related to the apartment itself, but to the search process, is the possibility of encountering a scam, meaning if you post an ad in a Facebook group saying you need an apartment, there's a chance someone might contact you and offer an apartment at a price slightly below market value, so as not to be too suspicious. Of course, they'll ask you to pay the first month's rent as a deposit, and in the end it might turn out that upon arrival in Luxembourg, there's no apartment, the deposit is gone, and you still need to book a hotel. About searching for an apartment locally. In this case, the disadvantages I mentioned earlier don't apply. You can inspect everything, walk around the neighborhood, find out about the surrounding infrastructure, like a school, kindergarten, a specific store, or any other infrastructure facilities, parking availability, how full it usually is, because that's a real problem in Luxembourg. This method also has its drawbacks. You usually need the apartment right now, or better yet, yesterday, to avoid overpaying for hotels and avoid moving around because it's tiring and stressful. Trips and apartment viewings take time. Agents typically work during normal business hours, meaning from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. If you're also working, you need to take time off work, travel, view the place, and that's not always convenient. Until you find the right apartment, you need somewhere to live. That's either a hotel or Airbnb. It turned out for us that we found an apartment and moved into it a month and a half after arriving in Luxembourg. And in that interval, we moved 2 or 3 times. It happened that in the first hotel we stayed, it was impossible to extend the booking. So we urgently looked for the next place on Airbnb and then another one. For some, this might be unacceptable, especially if they have small children or lots of things to move. At that time, we didn't have children, we had a car, but it was still very tiring. Most likely, while living in a hotel or Airbnb, you won't be able to register with the local commune. Without this registration, you can't open a bank account. Consequently, you can't receive your salary. There are 2 reasons why registration might be impossible. First, the host themselves might not want to register you. And second, the address of the hotel or Airbnb apartment might be designated as tourist accommodation, and registering there is fundamentally impossible by law. So a question arises. Every person moving here knows that you need to register within 3 days of arriving in Luxembourg. If you're staying in a hotel, this is impossible. What should you do? In my case, I sent an email to the administration of the commune where the hotel was located and asked, "Guys, I've arrived, I'm living in a hotel, haven't found an apartment yet, and by law I must register. Could you please tell me what to do?" To which I received a reply, "Don't worry, as soon as you find an apartment, register then, no problem." By the way, local administrative bodies respond well to emails, communicate quite quickly in English, French, Luxembourgish, German. There are no problems with that. Now, I'll actually show you the tools we use to find the apartment. I use the website and app athome.lu. There's also immotop.lu. Many listings, a lot of listings are duplicated. I liked Athome for its user-friendly interface. They have a convenient interface. This is not an ad. It's very convenient that you can set up search filters, for example, price, number of rooms, parking space, pets allowed or not, area, and so on and so forth. And you can save this filter. And you can set up several such filters. For example, choose different locations like Esch, Luxembourg City, or somewhere else. And as soon as an apartment appears that meets any of these criteria, you receive a notification on your phone or email, depending on the settings. At that moment, I recommend calling the agent immediately and arranging a viewing. Don't bother writing emails. They receive them in batches, tens, hundreds, and they really don't like answering them. Now let's see the website athome.lu, where I searched for an apartment. It is convenient. You can switch it to English right away for those who don't speak French, like me. Let's see what apartments are offered for rent in 2023. I'll look at a few offers, paying attention to important information contained in these listings. Let's see the rent, and let it be Luxembourg, Luxembourg City. I'm only interested in apartments, not houses, land, or offices. Let the budget be a maximum of 2,000 euros, minimum number of separate bedrooms, one minimum area, let's say 40 square meters. One thing to be aware of is that if the rent exceeds 1/3 of the total household income, the chance of renting that particular apartment decreases sharply. In other words, if the total family income is 6,000 euros, you should be prepared to receive many rejections if you're considering apartments costing 2,000 euros per month or more. Okay, 192 apartments found in Luxembourg. Additional search criteria have appeared on the left. For example, for those with a car, a parking space is very important because in Luxembourg that's a real problem. Only 77 listings with a parking space. I'll remove that for now. Here you can also choose an apartment that's already furnished or unfurnished. Right now there are 80 listings for furnished apartments. Usually only the kitchen is included in the rental, meaning cupboards, maybe a dishwasher, stove, refrigerator, while the rest of the apartment is completely empty. I'll show some examples later. Short-term rental means about a year or half a year. Next, garden, terrace, balcony, for whom this is important. And other important search criteria. For example, apartments available right now. So out of 190 listings, only 50 apartments are available right now, ready to move into. All other apartments are available later. Only 4 apartments allow pets. There are 192 listings and only 4 apartments allow pets. Another criterion is the presence of an elevator in the building. Many buildings in Luxembourg are 3 to 4, maybe 5 floors high, and often they don't have an elevator inside. If a family has small children, and the apartment is on the 3rd or 4th floor, carrying them up and down several times a day can be very uncomfortable. Next, listings that specify the exact address of the apartment. There are only 35 of them out of 192, remember? In all other listings, only the city is indicated. I'll show the consequences of this using examples from the listings. Here you can also set how recent the listings in the search should be, 3 days, 8 days, or 15 days. I'll set the presence of a parking space as mandatory for myself, and as an example, how many apartments allow pets. Just one apartment in Luxembourg that has its own parking space and allows pets. That's how it is. It's convenient to save this search here and set up notifications. This means that as soon as a new listing appears that meets all the set search criteria, a notification will immediately be sent to your email or phone, so you can call the agent right away and arrange a viewing. You can save this search and give it a name, like this, for example. You can save several such searches, for example, for each city, if you don't have a specific preference. And then for every new listing that meets at least one of the saved searches, you will receive a notification. All saved searches are here. For example, I have 2. This one is old, which I created back in 2022, and it indicates that 6 new listings have appeared since I last looked at it. and I looked at it a week ago. Also, from this page, you can run the already created search, and the site will automatically apply all the criteria that were set beforehand, so you won't need to enter them again every time. Another convenient function of this site is that you can view the listings on a map. A year has passed and this bug still hasn't been fixed. When switching to map view, the search changes from rent to purchase. It shows apartments for 0.1 euro. Here you need to change it back to rent and click search, and then all the apartments that were in the list will be displayed here on the map. This can be convenient when you have a specific preference for a particular area. I want to draw attention to this number 20. It gives the impression here that the apartments are right in the city center, but that's not the case. These are apartments without an exact address specified. The site places them right in the city center. Let's see the first listing. First and foremost, you should look at the photos, of course. Let's assume we've already looked at them. And now, what's stated in the listing? It's in French, but let's tell Firefox to translate everything into English. What's important here? First, the parking space is rented additionally for 180 euros per month. Second, pets are not allowed here. By pets, they mean absolutely everything. Not just cats and dogs, but also mice, fish, birds, anything. Here is the address and agent's phone number, which you should call immediately. Let's check our expenses. Monthly rent amount of advance payments for utilities. Also, the security deposit, which equals 3 months rent. All in all, to move into this apartment, you need to have at least 7,000 euros. By the way, the agent's commission isn't mentioned here. It equals to 1 month's rent plus 17% tax. So in this case, you would need around 9,000 euros to move into this apartment. Then they promised to change this, meaning that the landlord should pay the agent and not the tenant. Whether this change has come into effect or not, I haven't followed, so I can't say. You need to read the listing carefully. The apartment is available now. The apartment is on the 2nd floor. Number of bedrooms, 1. Total rooms, 5. So the other 4 rooms are some other kind of rooms. Energy class is B. By the way, regarding the energy class, it might be important for some, not for others. The higher the energy class, the less you have to turn on the radiators and heating in winter. This means lower expenses from the family budget on utilities. As for the apartment address, it's usually listed at the bottom. In this case, it's not specified, and the site placed this apartment right in the city center, but in reality, it could be anywhere. Next apartment, 66 square meters, and here are the photos of the rooms. Here, as in most listings, the photos are taken from the corner. This creates the impression that the room is very large, but in reality, this might not be the case at all. And here, from this photo, you can immediately notice, for those who care of course, that this wall is not flush with this wall, so this space might just be lost. It's also unclear what this protrusion is here. The apartment is completely empty. The light fixtures are these temporary ones, meaning when tenants move in, if they need, they can install their own light fixtures. However, when moving out, these fixtures have to be removed. All contracts state that the condition of the apartment upon moving out must be the same as the condition of the apartment upon moving in. Or you can of course negotiate with the next tenants that they will buy your fixtures to avoid the hassle of removing them. If you like the apartment, you can always save it to your favorites so you don't lose it, and the favorites are stored here. Here it is, one apartment. Let's see what's in the body of the listing. It's in French. What's important here? First, it's stated again directly, pets are not allowed. The apartment is available right now. And what's very important, the apartment is rented either to a single person or a couple, family of 2, meaning if there are 3 people like a family with a small child, this apartment cannot be rented. You should always pay attention to this in the listings. It indicates what's nearby, bus stop, supermarket and everything else. Regarding the money, rent amount 1,950 euros, advance utility payments 250 euros, and deposit 5,850 euros, totaling around 8,000 euros needed to move into this apartment. Additional parameters available now. Elevator, yes. Apartment is on the 2nd floor. Energy class not specified. Now regarding the address. The address is specified exactly. So you see, it's no longer in the city center, but somewhere around here. I found this apartment on Google Maps. Here it is. You can take a walk using Google Street View to see what's in the area. It's this building. Quiet and calm street. No highway, no trains, no parking lots here. But it's very important to pay attention to this. The photos were taken in 2009. Everything could have changed since then, or maybe it hasn't changed, but you need to consider this risk. Overall, it's nice and looks very Luxembourgish. Quiet and calm. The only thing here is that the windows face a garage. There is nothing special about the next listing. I just wanted to show the effect of a wide-angle lens in photos. The apartment is only 37 square meters. But if you look at this photo or this photo, it gives the impression that the room is really big. Let's check the last listing. By the way, if you look at the photo here too, it gives the impression that the room is really, really big. The listing is in 2 languages, English and French. The apartment is available from July 1st, 2023, while I'm preparing this video on June 10th, 2023. So in 2 to 3 weeks, the apartment will be available. Nothing special is mentioned here and nothing is said about pets. What is mentioned, I noticed, is the agent's commission. It means a tenant pays the agent. For some reason, the security deposit isn't mentioned here. Maybe the landlord doesn't need it anymore. Here it says the apartment is available right now, but here it says from July 1st. As a rule, the most relevant information is indicated here in the body of the listing and not in these fields. Let's check elevator. It's here. The apartment is on the 4th floor. Having the elevator is very good. Year of construction, 2013, so not such an old building. Next, the address. This is not an exact address, but rather an area in the city, meaning it's not just Luxembourg City, placing it right in the center, but the house number on the street is also not specified. If you search for this on Google Maps, it looks like this. This apartment could be located anywhere along here. It could be here, right near the train station, and renting it. Well, that could be not that convenient, or it could be here on the left, not far from the park. Nearby, there's a very good coffee place, Bloom, with good coffee and desserts. You can meet me there quite often. Recommend it. A few words about what a security deposit is. The security deposit is an amount that the tenant most often transfers from their bank account to the landlord's account in case of damage the tenant might cause to the apartment. At the end of the contract, when the tenant moves out of the apartment and there was no damage, this amount should be returned by the landlord back to the tenant's account. But there's a psychological nuance here. As soon as the landlord receives the money into their account, they will most likely spend it. Thus, when the contract ends after 2 or 3 years and the tenant wants to move out, the landlord will need to find this money somewhere to return it to the tenant. To return less of this money, they might nitpick every tiny crack during the move-out inspection. Therefore, I recommend setting up what's called a bank guarantee. Any bank in Luxembourg knows what this is. You can just go in and ask and they will set it up. To set up a bank guarantee in a Luxembourg bank, you need to have an account at that bank. How does it work? The bank blocks the security deposit amount in the tenant's account, meaning this money is not transferred to the landlord. The bank issues an official document stating that it has blocked this amount for the owner of the apartment. So the landlord can't just withdraw this money with a credit card and spend it. It requires writing paperwork to the bank, requesting the funds. It involves extra steps. So in theory, they can do it, but in practice, I've never heard of it happening. Thus, when the contract ends and the tenant moves out, this amount gets unblocked in the tenant's account. And consequently, the landlord doesn't need to find these 5,850 euros, for example, from their own funds to send back to the tenant. A question might arise. Earlier, I mentioned that the bank will only open an account after you have found accommodation here, but you need accommodation for a bank guarantee. And it creates a sort of catch-22 situation. How did it work out for me? I found an apartment that was available in a month. Consequently, I already had a signed contract in hand. With this signed contract, a bank could open a bank account for me. And right there, I immediately made the bank guarantee. The bank guarantee, or this security deposit, is not needed at the moment of signing the contract. It's needed at the moment of moving into the apartment. So if you find an apartment that you're moving into in 2 weeks, for example, you have 2 weeks to open a bank account. That is, if the move-in date is in 2 or 3 weeks and the bank manages to open the account in time, then there's no problem with the bank guarantee, but you should always check with the bank how long it takes to open a bank account. This always varies greatly. For some, it might be 5 business days. For some banks, like ING in 2023, it takes 5 weeks. Okay, so as for the apartment viewing itself, nothing complicated at this stage. You can look everything around, touch everything, switch things on and off, ask the agent any questions you have. They usually speak fine in English, and as I said, in French, German, many speak Spanish, Portuguese. Additional questions I would ask on top of all the other important ones are, firstly, is internet connected, meaning fiber optic line, because if it's not installed, you'll likely have to pay for it yourself. Second, check the mobile signal strength in the rooms, because as I mentioned, Sometimes it just disappears completely. Another question I couldn't have guessed when moving is whether there are garbage bins. We moved into a building that had just been built, and for the first 2 weeks, there were simply no garbage bins. If you like the apartment, you need to ask the agent what documents they need to provide you with a contract for review. At this stage, there are no obligations. You can turn around and leave. These documents are usually your work contract, and sometimes they ask for the previous 3 pay slips. That is, salary slips for the previous 3 months. Obviously, someone who has just moved to Luxembourg doesn't have these pay slips, and you need to negotiate with the agent. Some landlords strictly require the last 3 pay slips. If you don't have them, the agent can't rent it out. They will just tell you immediately that they can't rent the apartment. We viewed 6 or 7 apartments. I was asked about pay slips twice. I said I had just moved, and there were no problems with that. They just asked for the work contract. After sending the work contract via email, the agent usually sends an unsigned contract for review. At this stage, there's still no obligations to move into the apartment. Basically, until the contract is signed, you can always say that you don't like it, and that's it. You part ways. There is usually very, very high demand for apartments. Currently, in 2023, I heard a story where an apartment received about 50 applicants, 50 applications within 2 days. The agent collects all these applications and sends them to the owner. And the owner chooses from this pile those who seem less problematic for them. Well, again, the following are my impressions. It's slightly easier for people without children to find an apartment than for people with children. It's much easier for people without pets to find an apartment than for people with pets. By the way, the attitude towards pets in Luxembourg is abnormally strange. I haven't encountered this anywhere else. If you like the apartment and all clauses in the contract are okay and everything is good, then you need to call the agent and express your agreement to rent this apartment. Usually the agent informs you of the owner's decision within 1 or 2 days. I recommend not waiting but calling and asking about the status, because time is money for a tenant, like hotel costs, if one stays in a hotel here. I have 3 examples of contracts that I received for review, and perhaps when I get around to it, I will make a review of the most interesting and important points that are found in all these contracts.